The morning sun cast long shadows across Nellis Air Force Base as Captain Sarah Chen completed her preflight inspection of the A-10 Thunderbolt II. Her gloved hands moved methodically over every surface, checking each rivet, every panel, with the same precision she had demonstrated for the past 6 years. The aircraft sat heavy and purposeful on the tarmac, its twin engines mounted high on the fuselage, the massive GAU-8 cannon protruding from its nose like the barrel of some ancient war machine. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. From across the flight line, she could hear the high-pitched whine of F-16 engines spinning up. The sound was sharp, almost musical, a stark contrast to the deep rumble her Warthog would produce. She didn't need to look to know that Major Rick Torres and his squadron were preparing for their morning sortie. Their laughter carried on the desert wind, punctuated by comments she had learned to ignore. "Still flying that museum piece, Chen?" The voice belonged to Captain Jake Morrison, Torres's wingman. He strutted across the tarmac with the confidence of someone who had never questioned his place in the hierarchy of military aviation. His flight suit was pristine, pressed to perfection, every patch and insignia precisely placed. "I heard the Smithsonian called. They want their exhibit back." Sarah continued her inspection without looking up. She ran her fingers along the leading edge of the wing, checking for any signs of stress or damage. The A-10 had been built for punishment, designed to absorb enemy fire and keep flying. Every scar on its aluminum skin told a story of survival, of missions completed against impossible odds. "You know, Chen," Morrison continued, encouraged by what he perceived as her silence, "if you ever want to join the 21st century, I could put in a word for you with the F-16 program. Assuming you can handle something that actually flies, instead of just falls with style." The comment drew chuckles from the other pilots gathering near the briefing facility. Sarah finally straightened, her inspection complete, and turned to face Morrison. She was shorter than most of the men in the squadron, but there was something in her posture that commanded attention. Her dark hair was pulled back in a regulation bun, not a strand out of place despite the Nevada wind. "Thanks for the offer, Morrison," she said, her voice level and professional. "But some of us prefer aircraft that can actually provide close air support instead of just looking pretty in formation flights." Morrison's smile faltered slightly. "Close air support is obsolete, Chen. Precision strikes, standoff weapons. Beyond visual range engagements, that's modern warfare. Your flying tank is a relic from a war that ended before you were born." Sarah climbed the ladder to her cockpit, her movements fluid and practiced. She had heard variations of this conversation hundreds of times. The A-10 Thunderbolt II, affectionately known as the Warthog, was indeed a product of Cold War thinking. Designed in the 1970s to destroy Soviet armor on European battlefields, it was slow, ungainly, and built around a gun that fired depleted uranium shells the size of milk bottles. In an age of stealth fighters and precision-guided munitions, the A-10 seemed like an anachronism. The Air Force had tried to retire the aircraft multiple times, only to be overruled by Congress and ground commanders who understood its unique capabilities. But that didn't stop the fast jet community from viewing A-10 pilots as second-class citizens. Sarah settled into her cockpit, the familiar environment wrapping around her like a second skin. The instrument panel was analog by modern standards, banks of mechanical gauges and switches that required pilot skill rather than computer processing power. She began her startup sequence, each action deliberate and methodical. The engines wound up with a characteristic whine that deepened into a growl. The aircraft shook slightly as the twin turbofans came online, their distinctive sound announcing to everyone on the flight line that the Warthog was awake. Sarah completed her systems checks, testing each control surface, verifying weapon systems. Status, confirming navigation alignment. Through her canopy, she watched the F-16's taxi toward the runway in tight formation. Their sleek profiles cut through the morning heat, shimmer like silver bullets, all sharp angles and aggressive lines. They moved with the fluid grace of predators, their single engines producing more thrust than both of her turbofans combined. Sarah keyed her radio to ground control frequency. Nellis ground, Hog 77, ready to taxi. Hog 77. Nellis ground, taxi to runway 21 left via taxiway Alpha. Wind 090 at 15. Altimeter 2-9er-8-7. Roger, taxi to 21 left via Alpha, Hog 77. She released the brakes and felt the A-10 begin to roll. The aircraft moved with deliberate purpose rather than eagerness, its massive landing gear absorbing every imperfection in the taxiway. This was not a machine built for speed or elegance. It was built to survive, to fight, and to bring its pilot home. The briefing that morning had been routine. Sarah's mission was a training exercise over the Nevada test and training range, practicing close air support scenarios with ground controllers. She would fly low and slow, identifying simulated enemy positions and delivering practice munitions with the precision that had made the A-10 legendary among ground forces. It was exactly the kind of mission that the F-16 pilots considered beneath them. They preferred high-altitude intercepts, air-to-air combat scenarios, or precision strike missions that showcased their aircraft's advanced avionics and standoff capabilities. Close air support was dirty work, requiring pilots to operate in the weeds, exposed to ground fire, coordinating closely with troops who spoke in grid coordinates and urgency rather than technical specifications. As Sarah reached the runway threshold, she performed her final checks. Control surfaces moved freely, engine parameters were normal, weapon systems showed ready status. The A-10 might be old, but it was reliable in ways that newer aircraft sometimes weren't. When ground troops called for help, they didn't want cutting-edge technology that might glitch or malfunction. They wanted something that would show up, deliver ordnance on target, and stay in the fight until the job was done. Nellis Tower, Hog 77, ready for departure. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Hog 77 Nellis Tower. Cleared for takeoff runway 21 left. Contact departure on 1-4.9er. Cleared for takeoff 21 left, switching to departure, Hog 77. Sarah advanced the throttles and felt the A-10 accelerate down the runway. The takeoff roll was longer than an F-16 would require, but she wasn't in a hurry. The aircraft lifted off with a sense of inevitability rather than urgency, climbing steadily into the Nevada sky. Below her, the base grew smaller, its geometric patterns of runways and buildings disappearing into the vast expanse of desert. The mountains on the horizon shimmered in the heat, their peaks cutting sharp silhouettes against the pale blue sky. This was her element, not the sterile environment of high-altitude flight, but the textured landscape where real battles were fought and won. Sarah had grown up in a small farming town in Iowa, where her father worked as a crop duster pilot. She had spent her childhood summers in the cockpit of his old Cessna ag wagon, learning to read the landscape from above, understanding how terrain affected wind patterns and aircraft performance. When other kids were playing video games, she was studying sectional charts and learning to identify landmarks from memory. Her path to the Air Force had been unconventional. While her classmates at the Air Force Academy dreamed of flying fighters, Sarah had been drawn to the A-10 from the moment she first saw one. There was something honest about the aircraft, something unpretentious that appealed to her Midwestern sensibilities. It didn't pretend to be something it wasn't. It was a flying gun, designed for one purpose and optimized to perform that mission better than any other aircraft in the world. The training pipeline for A-10 pilots was different from the fighter track. While F-16 pilots learned air-to-air combat, electronic warfare, and precision strike techniques. A-10 pilots focused on close air support, battlefield interdiction, and combat search and rescue. They studied ground tactics, learned to communicate with forward air controllers, and practiced the delicate art of delivering ordnance danger close to friendly forces. Sarah had excelled in training, demonstrating an intuitive understanding of the A-10's capabilities and limitations. Her instructors noted her exceptional situational awareness and her ability to remain calm under pressure. She graduated at the top of her class and was assigned to the 355th Fighter Squadron at Davis-Monthan Air Force Base in Arizona. Her first deployment had been to Afghanistan, where the A-10's reputation for close air support had made it the most requested aircraft among ground commanders. While F-16s and F-15s flew high-altitude missions against strategic targets, A-10s worked in the dirt with infantry units and special operations forces. They loitered over battlefields for hours, providing persistent coverage that faster aircraft couldn't match. Sarah's first combat mission had been a troops-in-contact scenario in Helmand Province. A Marine unit had been pinned down by Taliban fighters in a compound, taking casualties and running low on ammunition. The terrain was too rough for helicopter extraction, and the enemy positions were too close to friendly forces for conventional artillery or airstrikes. She had arrived on station as the sun was setting, the golden light making it difficult to distinguish between Marines and insurgents. The forward air controller's voice had been calm but urgent, calling out target locations with the precision that came from desperation. Sarah had made multiple passes, using her cannon to suppress enemy positions, while coordinating with ground forces to ensure she was engaging the right targets. The mission had lasted 4 hours, well beyond the endurance of any fighter aircraft. Sarah had returned to base with her fuel tanks nearly empty and her ammunition exhausted, but the Marines had been extracted without additional casualties. The ground commander had personally thanked her over the radio, his voice thick with emotion as he described how her presence had turned the tide of the battle. That night, as Sarah completed her post-flight paperwork, she had understood why. She flew the A-10. It wasn't about speed or sophistication. It was about being there when people needed you most, staying in the fight when others had to leave, and accepting that sometimes the most important missions weren't glamorous or technically challenging. Over the course of her deployment, Sarah had flown 87 combat missions. She had provided close air support for Army Rangers, Marine Infantry, and British Special Forces. She had escorted helicopter medical evacuations through hostile territory and conducted combat search and rescue operations for downed pilots. Each mission had reinforced her belief that the A-10, despite its age and limitations, remained uniquely capable in ways that newer aircraft couldn't replicate. But those experiences seemed distant now as she leveled off at her assigned altitude over the Nevada range. The training mission ahead was routine, a chance to practice skills that she hoped would never again be needed in combat. The wars in Iraq and Afghanistan were winding down, and military planners were shifting focus to new threats that required different capabilities. The debate over the A-10's future had intensified in recent years. Air Force leadership argued that the aircraft was too vulnerable to survive in contested airspace against peer adversaries like China or Russia. Modern surface-to-air missiles could easily target the slow, low-flying Warthog, and its lack of stealth characteristics made it unsuitable for operations in environments where air superiority hadn't been established. Critics pointed out that the aircraft's primary mission, destroying enemy armor, was less relevant in an era of counterinsurgency operations and precision warfare. The massive GAU-8 cannon that defined the I-10 was designed to penetrate Soviet tank armor, but most modern conflicts involved irregular forces using civilian vehicles and improvised equipment. Sarah understood the arguments, even if she disagreed with the conclusions. The A-10 was indeed vulnerable to modern air defenses, But most conflicts didn't involve peer adversaries with sophisticated missile systems. The aircraft's ruggedness and survivability had been proven in thousands of combat missions, and its ability to operate from austere airfields made it invaluable for rapid deployment scenarios. More importantly, the A-10's unique characteristics, its ability to fly low and slow, its exceptional visibility for ground reconnaissance, its long loiter time, and its psychological impact on enemy forces couldn't be replicated by faster, more advanced aircraft. When ground troops called for close air support, they wanted to see and hear the aircraft overhead. The distinctive sound of the GAU-8 cannon had become legendary among infantry units, a sound that meant salvation was arriving. As Sarah began her training mission, working with ground controllers to identify simulated targets in the Nevada desert, she reflected on the irony of her situation. The same pilots who mocked her aircraft for being outdated had never experienced the satisfaction of providing close air support to troops in contact. They had never felt the weight of responsibility that came with being the only thing standing between friendly forces and disaster. The F-16 pilots flew their missions with clinical precision, engaging targets from standoff ranges using precision-guided munitions. They were undoubtedly skilled, and their aircraft were marvels of modern engineering. But they had never looked into the eyes of a soldier whose life they had saved, never felt the emotional weight of being truly needed in the most desperate moments of combat. Sarah completed her training mission with the same methodical precision she brought to everything else. She delivered simulated ordnance on target, coordinated effectively with ground controllers, and demonstrated the low-altitude maneuvering that made the A-10 so effective in the close air support role. It was routine work, but she approached it with the professionalism that had defined her career. As she flew back to Nellis, the setting sun painting the desert landscape in shades of orange and purple, Sarah allowed herself a moment of pride in her chosen aircraft. The A-10 might be old and unglamorous and disparaged by her peers, but it had saved countless lives and would continue to do so as long as ground forces needed close air support. She didn't know that thousands of miles away, events were already in motion that would put both her skills and her aircraft to the ultimate test. Intelligence analysts were tracking suspicious activity in a remote region where American interests were threatened. Military planners were developing contingency operations that would require capabilities that only one aircraft in the American arsenal could provide. The call would come soon, and when it did, the same pilots who had mocked her flying museum piece would find themselves desperately hoping that Sarah Chen and her A-10 Thunderbolt II would be available to provide the kind of support that no other aircraft could deliver. For now, though, she was just another pilot completing another training mission, flying an aircraft that the Air Force wanted to retire, preparing for a war that military planners hoped would never come. The desert stretched endlessly below her, its harsh beauty a reminder that in the most unforgiving environments, survival often depended on tools that prioritized function over form, reliability over sophistication. Sarah keyed her radio to tower. Frequency as Nellis Air Force Base appeared on the horizon. Nellis Tower, Hog 77, inbound for landing with information Bravo. Hog 77, Nellis Tower, runway 21 left cleared to land. Wind 080 at 12, altimeter 2985. Cleared to land 21 left. Hog 77. She configured the A-10 for landing, extending the landing gear and adjusting power settings for her final approach. The aircraft descended toward the runway with the same steady purpose it brought to everything else, touching down with a gentle thump that spoke to both pilot skill and aircraft design. As she taxied back to the parking area, Sarah could see the F-16s already secured for the night, their sleek forms covered by protective canopies. The pilots were probably in the club by now, rehashing their missions and planning their evening activities. They would be discussing air-to-air tactics, comparing scores from training exercises, and speculating about future assignments to more glamorous aircraft and more prestigious squadrons. Sarah shut down her engines and completed her post-flight inspection with the same attention to detail she brought to everything else. She walked around the aircraft, checking for any signs of damage or unusual wear, making notes for the maintenance crew who would prepare the A-10 for its next mission. It was unglamorous work, but it was part of being a professional pilot. The hangar was quiet as she completed her paperwork. The only sound the distant hum of air conditioning and the occasional radio chatter from the control tower. Sarah took pride in the thoroughness of her documentation, knowing that accurate records were essential for maintaining aircraft safety and mission readiness. She had no way of knowing that within 48 hours, her quiet professionalism and dedication to an obsolete aircraft would become the most important assets in the Air Force inventory. The crisis that was developing would require exactly the capabilities that she and her A-10 possessed, capabilities that couldn't be replicated by faster, more modern aircraft. For now, though, she was just Captain Sarah Chen, A-10 pilot, completing another day of training in the Nevada desert. Tomorrow would bring another mission, another opportunity to practice skills that she hoped would remain theoretical. The A-10 would continue to face an uncertain future, caught between budget constraints and the military's desire for newer, more capable aircraft. But Sarah would continue to fly and fight in whatever aircraft she was given, bringing the same dedication and professionalism that had defined her career. She believed in the A-10's mission and capabilities, even if others didn't share her conviction. When the time came to prove that belief, she would be ready. The desert wind carried the sound of her footsteps across the empty tarmac as she walked toward her quarters. Another day complete, another step closer to whatever challenges lay ahead. Behind her, the A-10 sat silent and waiting, its ungainly form a testament to the principle that effectiveness mattered more than appearance, that sometimes the most important work was done by those who didn't seek recognition or glory. Sarah's reputation at Nellis was built on competence rather than charisma. While other pilots sought attention through aggressive flying or outspoken opinions about aircraft capabilities, she let her performance speak for itself. Her mission completion rate was perfect, her weapons accuracy scores consistently topped the squadron rankings, and her safety record was spotless. The other pilots respected her skills, even if they questioned her choice of aircraft. During joint training exercises, when A-10s worked alongside F-16s in complex scenarios, Sarah's ability to coordinate ground support operations often made the difference between mission success and failure. She had an intuitive understanding of battlefield dynamics that came from years of studying ground tactics and close air support procedures. Her quarters were Spartan by choice, furnished with only the essentials needed for functional living. The walls displayed her pilot certificates and commendations, but nothing that suggested ego or self-promotion. A small bookshelf held technical manuals, tactical publications, and a few novels that she read during her limited free time. Sarah's evening routine was as disciplined as her flying. She reviewed the next day's weather forecast, studied any changes to operating procedures or tactical guidance, and maintained her physical conditioning with a workout routine that emphasized functional fitness over aesthetic goals. She understood that combat flying required mental and physical resilience that couldn't be developed through casual effort. The phone in her quarters remained silent, offering no hint of the encrypted communications flowing through secure channels. At higher levels of command, intelligence analysts were correlating satellite imagery with human intelligence reports, trying to build a comprehensive picture of developing threats in regions where American forces might soon be required to operate. Military planners were reviewing force structures and deployment options, considering which units and aircraft types would be most effective for various contingency scenarios. The debates were intense and ongoing, with different services advocating for their preferred solutions to complex operational challenges. The A-10 community was acutely aware that their aircraft's future remained uncertain. Budget pressures and evolving threat assessments continued to fuel discussions about retirement timelines and replacement aircraft. Some pilots had already begun transitioning to other platforms, seeking to position themselves advantageously for career advancement in an air force that increasingly valued multi-role fighters over specialized attack aircraft. Sarah had been offered opportunities to cross-train on other aircraft types, but she had declined each invitation. Her commitment to the A-10 wasn't based on nostalgia or stubborn resistance to change. She genuinely believed that the aircraft's unique capabilities remained relevant and important, even in an evolving strategic environment. Her conviction was based on careful analysis of military operations around the world. While peer adversaries like China and Russia received the most attention in strategic planning documents, the reality was that most military operations involved asymmetric conflicts where A-10s excelled. Humanitarian interventions, counter-terrorism operations, and peacekeeping missions required aircraft that could operate from austere airfields, provide persistent coverage, and deliver precise effects in complex environments. The A-10's ability to fly low and slow wasn't a limitation in such scenarios, it was an advantage. Pilots could visually identify targets, distinguish between combatants and civilians, and coordinate closely with ground forces in ways that high-altitude platforms couldn't match. The aircraft's ruggedness and redundant systems provided survival margins that were especially important when operating from forward bases with limited maintenance support. Sarah's analysis of recent conflicts reinforced her belief that reports of the A-10's obsolescence were premature. Libya, Syria, Iraq, and Afghanistan had all demonstrated the continued relevance of close air support missions that required specialized aircraft and highly trained pilots. The challenge was convincing decision-makers who were focused on future threats rather than current realities. As she prepared for sleep, Sarah reviewed her personal goals and professional commitments. She wanted to continue flying the A-10 as long as the Air Force would allow it, contributing her skills and experience to missions that mattered. Beyond that, she hoped to influence the next generation of pilots, sharing the knowledge and perspective that came from years of combat experience. The night was quiet except for the distant sound of aircraft operations that continued around the clock at Nellis. Somewhere in the darkness, other pilots were flying training missions, practicing skills that might soon be needed in real-world scenarios. The machinery of military readiness never stopped, preparing for conflicts that might never come while maintaining the capability to respond when threats materialized. Sarah's sleep was deep and untroubled, the sleep of someone whose conscience was clear and whose professional responsibilities were being met to the highest standards. She had no dreams of glory or recognition, no anxieties about career advancement or professional politics. Her satisfaction came from mastering her craft and serving her country in whatever capacity was required. Morning would bring another day of training, another opportunity to practice and refine the skills that defined her as a pilot. The routine would continue until it was interrupted by real-world events that demanded immediate response. When that moment came, Sarah would be ready, professionally and personally prepared for whatever challenges awaited. The A-10 community at Nellis was small and tight-knit, bound together by shared commitment to an aircraft that many considered outdated. They supported each other through the challenges of flying a platform that received less attention and fewer resources than newer aircraft. Their solidarity was built on mutual respect for the skills required to excel in close air support missions. Sarah's position within this community was secure but not prominent. She was known for her competence and reliability rather than her leadership aspirations or political acumen. When other pilots had questions about tactics or procedures, they often sought her input, but she avoided the spotlight that came with formal leadership positions. Her approach to military service was fundamentally humble, focused on contribution rather than recognition. She believed that the best pilots were those who subordinated personal ambition to mission requirements, who found satisfaction in professional excellence rather than external validation. This philosophy had guided her career decisions and would continue to influence her response to future challenges. The question of what came next was always present, but not pressing. Sarah understood that military careers were subject to forces beyond individual control, that aircraft retirement schedules and force structure decisions would ultimately determine her options. She was prepared to adapt as necessary while maintaining her commitment to excellence regardless of the platform she flew. The emergency briefing notification arrived at 0347 hours, cutting through the pre-dawn silence of Nellis Air Force Base like a blade. Sarah's phone buzzed insistently on her nightstand, the harsh electronic tone pulling her from deep sleep to full alertness in seconds. Years of military training had conditioned her to wake completely and immediately, ready to process information and make decisions without the fog of transition that plagued civilian sleep cycles. She checked the message display with practiced efficiency. Priority Alpha briefing, all squadron personnel, Building 337, 0430 hours. No additional details. But the classification level and urgency indicators told her everything she needed to know. This was not a training exercise or routine administrative meeting. Something significant had happened, something that required immediate attention from combat-ready pilots. Sarah dressed quickly in her flight suit, muscle memory guiding her. Movements in the darkness. She had performed this routine countless times during deployments, preparing for missions that ranged from routine patrols to emergency combat sorties. The familiar ritual of checking pockets, adjusting zippers, and securing equipment helped center her mind for whatever challenge awaited. The base was unusually active for such an early hour. Security vehicles moved with purpose along the flight line, their headlights cutting through the desert darkness. Additional personnel were visible near the command facilities, and the normal pattern of nighttime operations had been replaced by an urgency that suggested developing crisis rather than planned activity. Building 337 housed the wing's primary briefing facility, a sterile environment designed for classified presentations and operational planning. As Sarah approached the entrance, she could see other pilots converging from multiple directions, their expressions reflecting the same combination of alertness and curiosity that she felt. Whatever had triggered this emergency briefing affected multiple squadrons and aircraft types. Inside, the main briefing room was already partially filled with aircrew from across the wing. The F-16 pilots occupied the front rows, their customary confidence evident in their posture and casual conversations. Major Torres sat with his usual inner circle, occasionally glancing toward the podium where classified material was being prepared for presentation. Sarah took a seat in the middle section, close enough to see all briefing materials, but far enough back to avoid unnecessary attention. She recognized most of the faces around her, pilots she had worked with during training exercises in joint operations. The atmosphere was tense but professional, the kind of focused energy that preceded significant military operations. Colonel Patricia Hawkins entered the briefing room at exactly 0430, her presence immediately commanding attention from the assembled aircrew. As wing commander, Hawkins was responsible for all flying operations at Nellis, and her reputation for direct communication and tactical expertise had earned respect throughout the fighter community. Behind her walked two intelligence officers carrying secure briefing materials and a communications specialist with encrypted presentation equipment. "Gentlemen and ladies," Hawkins began without preamble, "we have a developing situation that requires immediate response. What I'm about to brief you is classified secret, and the operational details are compartmented on a need-to-know basis. You're here because your aircraft and skills may be required for a time-sensitive mission." The room fell completely silent. Sarah could feel the shift in atmosphere as pilots transitioned from routine alertness to combat focus. This was not a training scenario or hypothetical exercise. Real-world events were unfolding that would require military response, and they were being considered as potential participants. The intelligence officer activated the presentation system, and the main screen displayed a satellite image of mountainous terrain that Sarah didn't immediately recognize. The landscape was rugged and sparsely populated, with elevation contours indicating significant altitude variations and limited infrastructure. Red symbols marked specific locations of interest, while blue indicators showed friendly force positions. The country of Valdres has been experiencing civil unrest for the past 6 months. Hawkins continued, her voice steady and authoritative. What began as political demonstrations has escalated into armed conflict between government forces and rebel groups. The situation remained contained until 48 hours ago, when rebel forces captured several strategic positions and took hostages. The next slide showed personnel photographs and biographical information. Sarah recognized the format from previous briefings about high-value individuals requiring protection or rescue. These were not random civilians, but specific people whose capture had strategic implications beyond their personal safety. Among the hostages are 12 American aid workers, 4 diplomatic personnel, and 6 civilian contractors supporting infrastructure development projects. They were captured during a coordinated attack on the capital city of Kerenska and are currently being held at a compound approximately 60 miles northeast of the city center. Sarah studied the tactical display with growing understanding. The compound was located in mountainous terrain that would complicate any rescue operation. The elevation and geography created natural defensive positions that would favor defenders over attacking forces. More importantly for her analysis, the location was too remote for helicopter operations and too defended for conventional ground assault. Initial rescue planning focused on special operations forces supported by conventional air assets, Hawkins continued. However, intelligence updates over the past 12 hours have significantly complicated the operational environment. The rebels have acquired surface-to-air missiles and have established integrated air defense positions around the compound. The briefing screen updated to show missile engagement zones overlaid on the topographical map. Sarah felt a chill of recognition as she analyzed the coverage patterns. The rebel forces had created an air defense network that would be extremely dangerous for conventional aircraft operating at medium or high altitudes. Fast-moving fighters would be vulnerable during attack runs, and helicopter operations would be essentially impossible. The missile systems include shoulder-fired weapons with infrared guidance and vehicle-mounted launchers with radar targeting capability, the intelligence officer added. Our assessment indicates that standard fighter aircraft would face unacceptable risk levels during close air support operations in this environment. Sarah understood the implications immediately, even before the briefing continued. The Air Force's preferred approach to ground support missions involved high-altitude operations using precision-guided munitions delivered from standoff ranges. But the hostage compound's location and defensive arrangements made such tactics impractical. The rebels had positioned themselves in a way that exploited the limitations of modern fighter aircraft. Additionally, Hawkins continued, the compound's construction and layout create significant challenges for precision targeting. The hostages are being held in buildings that are structurally connected to defensive positions. Any miscalculation in weapons delivery could result in civilian casualties that would be strategically and morally unacceptable. The next series of slides showed detailed imagery of the compound itself. Sarah could see how the buildings were arranged to maximize defensive advantages while creating a tactical nightmare for attacking forces. The rebels had chosen their position well, understanding that American military doctrine prioritized civilian protection and precision engagement over overwhelming firepower. Major Torres raised his hand and was recognized by Colonel Hawkins. "Ma'am, what's the timeline for this operation? Are we looking at immediate deployment or continued planning development?" "The diplomatic situation is deteriorating rapidly," Hawkins replied. "The Valdres government has requested American assistance, and the rebels have issued ultimatums regarding the hostages. We have a narrow window of opportunity before the situation becomes militarily or politically impossible to resolve." Sarah felt the weight of developing events settling over the briefing room. This was not a theoretical exercise or distant contingency. Real people were in immediate danger, and military intervention was being seriously considered, despite the tactical challenges involved. The complexity of the operational environment would test every aspect of American air power capabilities. The intelligence officer advanced to the next briefing slide, which showed a timeline of recent events and projected developments. The rebels had demonstrated increasing sophistication in their operations and had apparently received external support in acquiring advanced weapon systems. Their ability to coordinate complex attacks suggested professional military training or advisory assistance. "The political dimension adds urgency to military planning," Hawkins explained. "The Valdres government is facing internal pressure to resolve the hostage situation, and there are indications that they may attempt their own rescue operation if American assistance is not forthcoming. Such an operation would likely result in significant casualties and could destabilize the entire region." Sarah absorbed this information while continuing to study the tactical displays. The operational environment was unlike anything she had encountered during her deployments to Iraq and Afghanistan. Those conflicts had involved different terrain, different threats, and different rules of engagement. This situation required capabilities that were specifically suited to low-altitude operations in defended airspace against precision targets. Colonel Hawkins paused her briefing and looked directly at the assembled aircrew. "The mission planning process will require input from all aircraft communities represented in this room. We need to understand what each platform can and cannot contribute to a successful operation. The stakes are too high for service rivalry or platform advocacy. We need honest assessments of capabilities and limitations." The room remained silent as pilots processed the implications of her statement. Sarah could see Torres and his F-16 colleagues exchanging glances, their expressions suggesting recognition that their preferred aircraft might not be optimal for this particular mission. The defensive environment and precision requirements created challenges that played to different strengths than those typically emphasized in air-to-air combat or high-altitude strike missions. Each squadron will conduct detailed mission analysis and provide recommendations through normal planning channels. Hawkins continued, "I want operational assessments, not wishful thinking. If your aircraft cannot safely and effectively perform required missions in this environment, I need to know that immediately." Sarah understood that her moment of reckoning was approaching. The A-10's capabilities and limitations would be scrutinized more thoroughly than they had been in years. The aircraft's age and perceived obsolescence would be weighed against its unique ability to operate in exactly the kind of environment that the Valdres operation presented. The briefing continued with additional intelligence updates and planning considerations. Weather patterns in the target area were generally favorable, but subject to rapid changes due to mountain influences. Enemy force strength was estimated, but not precisely known, and their tactical proficiency remained a significant unknown variable. Communication with the hostages had been minimal, making detailed rescue planning extremely difficult. As the formal briefing concluded, pilots began dispersing to their respective squadron areas for detailed mission analysis. Sarah could hear fragments of conversation as F-16 pilots discussed the challenges presented by the operational environment. Their concerns centered on surface-to-air missile threats and the precision requirements for operations near hostage locations. "This is exactly the kind of mission we're not configured for," she heard Captain Morrison say to his wingmen. "Low altitude, defended airspace, precision targeting requirements. Our tactics are optimized for completely different scenarios." Sarah walked back toward the A-10 squadron area, her mind already working through the tactical analysis that would be required. She understood better than most pilots the unique demands of close air support operations in contested environments. The A-10 had been designed specifically for such missions, with capabilities that newer aircraft had sacrificed in favor of speed and sophistication. The squadron's planning room was already active when she arrived. Her fellow A-10 pilots were beginning their analysis of the Valdres situation, pulling out charts, technical manuals, and tactical publications that would inform their recommendations. The atmosphere was serious but optimistic, reflecting their understanding that this mission aligned closely with their aircraft's strengths. Captain Lisa Rodriguez, the squadron's operations officer, was coordinating the analysis effort. "Sarah, I want you to lead the weapons and tactics assessment. Your combat experience and technical knowledge make you the best qualified person to evaluate our capabilities against this specific threat environment." Sarah accepted the assignment without hesitation. This was exactly the kind of detailed analysis that she excelled at, combining technical knowledge with operational experience to produce realistic assessments of mission feasibility. She understood the A-10 systems and limitations better than almost anyone, and her combat experience provided perspective that couldn't be gained from training exercises alone. She began by studying the intelligence materials in detail, focusing on the defensive arrangements around the hostage compound. The surface-to-air missile systems that pose such a threat to high-altitude aircraft were less effective against targets operating at extremely low altitudes. The A-10's ability to fly in the weeds could potentially allow it to penetrate the defensive network that would stop faster aircraft. More importantly, the precision requirements for operations near hostage locations played directly to the A-10's strengths. The aircraft's slow speed and excellent visibility allowed pilots to visually identify targets and ensure positive identification before weapons release. The 30mm GAU-8 cannon provided precision that was impossible to achieve with conventional bombs or missiles, allowing surgical strikes against specific targets without risking collateral damage. Sarah's analysis continued through the morning as she evaluated various tactical approaches and weapons options. The A-10's armor and redundant systems provided survival advantages in defended airspace that unarmored aircraft couldn't match. Battle damage that would down an F-16 might be manageable for a Warthog, allowing continued mission execution even after taking hits. The psychological dimension was also significant. The A-10's distinctive appearance and sound had a proven ability to demoralize enemy forces while boosting friendly morale. Ground troops who saw and heard the distinctive aircraft knew that serious firepower was available to support them. The same effect might be valuable in a hostage rescue scenario where demonstrating overwhelming capability could discourage resistance. As her analysis progressed, Sarah became increasingly confident that the A-10 was uniquely suited for the Valdres mission. The aircraft's age and limitations, which were disadvantages in most modern scenarios, became advantages in this specific operational environment. The tactical requirements played to every strength the Warthog possessed while minimizing its weaknesses. But she also understood that her assessment would face skepticism from decision-makers who viewed the A-10 as obsolete. The Air Force leadership's preference for multi-role fighters and precision strike capabilities had shaped planning assumptions for years, convincing them that an outdated aircraft was the best solution for a high-stakes rescue operation would require compelling evidence and careful presentation. The squadron's analysis session continued into the afternoon as pilots worked through various mission scenarios and contingency plans. They considered different approach routes, weapons loads, and coordination requirements with other military units. The complexity of the operation demanded careful integration between air and ground forces, with timing and coordination being critical to success. Sarah's role in the planning process highlighted her reputation within the A-10 community. Other pilots sought her input on technical questions and tactical problems, recognizing her expertise and experience. Her combat deployments and system knowledge made her a valuable resource for mission planning, regardless of whether she would actually participate in the operation. As the day progressed, word began filtering back from other squadrons about their mission analysis results. The F-16 community was struggling with the tactical requirements, particularly the low-altitude operations and precision targeting needs. Their aircraft's speed and altitude capabilities, which were advantages in most scenarios, became liabilities in the constrained environment around the hostage compound. The intelligence picture was also evolving as additional information became available. The rebels appeared to be better organized and equipped than initial assessments had suggested. Their defensive positions showed evidence of professional military engineering, and their weapons systems were more capable than typical insurgent equipment. This was not a ragtag militia, but a well-trained and well-equipped military force. Sarah's phone rang in the late afternoon, interrupting her technical analysis. The caller identification showed Colonel Rodriguez, the wing's deputy commander. For operations. She answered immediately, recognizing that such a call during crisis planning indicated significant developments. "Captain Chen, I need you in my office immediately," Colonel Rodriguez said without preamble. "Bring your mission, analysis materials, and be prepared to brief senior leadership on A-10 capabilities for the Valdres operation." Sarah gathered her papers and laptop computer, ensuring that all classified materials were properly secured for transport. The request for a senior-level briefing indicated that her analysis was being seriously considered at higher levels of command. The A-10's potential role in the rescue operation was apparently receiving more attention than she had expected. Colonel Rodriguez's office was in the wing headquarters building, a short walk across the base from the squadron areas. As Sarah approached the building, she could see increased activity and additional security measures that suggested high-level planning sessions were in progress. Staff officers moved with purpose between offices, carrying briefing materials and communicating on secure phones. Inside the building, the atmosphere was tense but controlled. Staff members were clearly working under significant pressure, but their professionalism and training showed in their organized approach to crisis management. Sarah had experienced similar environments during deployment preparations when developing. Situations required rapid but thorough planning processes. Colonel Rodriguez's office was larger than typical squadron spaces, with secure communication equipment and briefing displays that allowed classified discussions at higher levels. When Sarah entered, she found Rodriguez studying intelligence materials while simultaneously monitoring several communication channels. The colonel looked up and gestured for her to take a seat. "Captain Chen, I've been reviewing the preliminary assessments from all squadrons regarding the Valdres operation," Rodriguez began. "Your A-10 community has provided the most optimistic evaluation of mission feasibility, while the F-16 squadrons have identified significant challenges that may make their participation inadvisable." Sarah nodded, having expected this development based on her own analysis. "Sir, the operational environment plays to the A-10's specific strengths while highlighting the limitations of faster aircraft. The combination of defended airspace, precision requirements, and mountainous terrain creates tactical challenges that the Warthog was designed to handle." Rodriguez leaned forward, his expression indicating intense interest in her assessment. "I need you to be completely honest with me, Captain. Can the A-10 actually accomplish this mission, or are you allowing platform loyalty to influence your judgment? The stakes are too high for anything less than brutal honesty." Sarah met his gaze directly, understanding the weight of his question. "Sir, based on my combat experience and technical knowledge of the aircraft, I believe the A-10 is not only capable of performing this mission, but may be the only platform that can do so safely and effectively. The tactical requirements align almost perfectly with our designed capabilities." "Explain that assessment in detail," Rodriguez requested. "I need to understand your reasoning because I'm going to be briefing the wing commander and potentially higher-level decision-makers. Your analysis needs to be bulletproof." Sarah opened her laptop and accessed the mission analysis she had been developing throughout the day. "Sir, the key factors are altitude requirements, precision capabilities, survivability in defended airspace, and psychological impact. The surface-to-air missile threat is primarily effective against medium and high-altitude targets. The A-10 can operate below the engagement envelope of most systems." She displayed a tactical diagram showing missile engagement zones and potential flight paths. Additionally, the precision requirements for operations near hostage locations require visual target identification and extremely accurate weapons delivery. The A-10's slow speed and excellent cockpit visibility allow pilots to positively identify targets before engagement, while the 30mm cannon provides surgical precision that's impossible with conventional bombs. Rodriguez studied the display intently, asking detailed questions about specific tactical procedures and weapons effects. Sarah answered each query with technical precision, drawing on her combat experience to illustrate how theoretical capabilities translated into real-world mission execution. Her confidence in the assessment grew as she explained the reasoning behind each conclusion. "What about survivability?" Rodriguez asked. "The intelligence indicates sophisticated defensive systems and well-trained personnel. Can the A-10 survive in that environment long enough to complete the mission?" "Sir, the A-10's armor and redundant systems provide significant advantages over unarmored aircraft," Sarah replied. "Battle damage that would destroy an F-16 might be manageable for a Warthog. The aircraft was designed to absorb punishment and continue flying, which is exactly what this mission might require." Rodriguez made notes on his tablet while continuing to question her analysis. Sarah could sense that he was testing her conclusions from multiple angles, ensuring that her recommendations were based on sound tactical reasoning rather than emotional attachment to her aircraft. The thoroughness of his questioning reinforced her confidence that the A-10's capabilities were being seriously evaluated at senior levels. "One final question, Captain," Rodriguez said after reviewing her materials. "If this mission is approved and you're selected to participate, are you personally prepared for the risks involved? This won't be a training exercise or routine combat patrol. The tactical environment will be extremely dangerous, and the political consequences of failure would be severe." Sarah didn't hesitate in her response. "Sir, I'm fully prepared to execute this mission to the best of my abilities. The tactical challenges are significant, but they're within the A-10's capabilities and my training. I understand the risks and accept them." Rodriguez closed his tablet and stood up, indicating that their meeting was concluding. "Thank you, Captain. Your analysis will be forwarded to wing leadership and potentially to higher command levels. Be prepared for additional questions and possible deployment orders. This situation is moving quickly, and decisions will be made within the next 24 hours." Sarah gathered her materials and prepared to leave, understanding that she had presented the strongest possible case for A-10 participation in the rescue operation. The final decision would be made by others, based on factors beyond tactical considerations alone. Political implications, risk assessments, and resource availability would all influence the ultimate choice of aircraft and tactics. As she walked back to her squadron area, Sarah reflected on the irony of the situation. The same aircraft that had been mocked and disparaged by her peers was now being seriously considered for one of the most challenging and important missions in recent memory. the tactical requirements that made the operation so difficult for modern fighters played directly to the A-10's strengths. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across Nellis Air Force Base as Sarah returned to her normal duties, but the atmosphere had changed dramatically since the morning briefing. Personnel throughout the base were aware that significant military operations were being planned, and the usual routine had been replaced by focused preparation for potential deployment. In the A-10 squadron area, her fellow pilots were continuing their mission analysis while simultaneously preparing aircraft and equipment for possible rapid deployment. The mood was serious but optimistic, reflecting their understanding that this might be their opportunity to demonstrate their aircraft's continued relevance in modern military operations. Sarah spent the evening reviewing technical publications and tactical manuals, ensuring that her knowledge of A-10 systems and procedures was current and complete. If she were selected for the Valdres mission, there would be no room for uncertainty or hesitation. Every system, every procedure, every tactical technique would need to be executed flawlessly under extreme pressure. Her phone remained silent through the evening, offering no indication of the high-level discussions that were certainly taking place about mission planning and force selection. The decision-making process would involve multiple command levels and would consider factors ranging from tactical feasibility to political implications. The complexity of modern military operations required careful coordination between military and civilian leadership. As she prepared for sleep, Sarah understood that this might be her last normal evening for some time. If the rescue operation was approved and A-10s were selected to participate, she would likely be among the pilots chosen for the mission. Her experience, technical knowledge, and mission analysis contributions made her a logical choice for such a critical operation. The notification that would change everything was already being prepared in secure communication channels. But for now, Sarah could only wait and maintain readiness for whatever decision was reached. The weight of developing events pressed against the quiet routine of base life, creating tension between normal activities and the knowledge that extraordinary circumstances were unfolding. Tomorrow would bring answers and possibly orders that would put her analysis to the ultimate test. The theoretical mission planning would become operational reality, and the A-10's capabilities would be proven or disproven in the most demanding possible circumstances. Sarah fell asleep with the confidence that came from thorough preparation and absolute commitment to mission success, whatever that mission might ultimately require. The secure phone in Sarah's quarters shattered the pre-dawn silence at 0515 hours, its harsh electronic tone cutting through the darkness with unmistakable urgency. She answered on the second ring, instantly alert despite having slept only 4 hours since completing her mission analysis the previous evening. Captain Chen, this is Colonel Rodriguez. Report to Building 337 immediately for mission briefing. Bring full deployment gear and be prepared for immediate departure. The line went dead before Sarah could respond, but no response was necessary. The tone and content of the message conveyed everything she needed to know. The Valdres operation had been approved, and her analysis had apparently convinced decision-makers that A-10 participation was not only viable but essential. Sarah dressed rapidly in her flight suit, her movements automatic and efficient despite the adrenaline surge that accompanied transition from sleep to combat readiness. She had packed her deployment bag the previous evening, anticipating this possibility, and her equipment was organized for rapid movement. Within 15 minutes of receiving the call, she was walking across the darkened base toward the briefing facility. The activity level at Nellis had increased dramatically since the previous day. Security patrols were more frequent and thorough. Additional personnel were visible near critical facilities, and the normal pattern of nighttime operations had been replaced by the controlled urgency that preceded major military operations. Sarah could see aircraft being prepared for departure, their shapes barely visible in the pre-dawn darkness. Building 337 was brightly lit despite the early hour, with security personnel checking identification more carefully than usual. Inside, the main briefing room had been reconfigured for operational planning rather than routine presentations. Multiple displays showed real-time intelligence feeds, weather data, and tactical overlays that painted a comprehensive picture of the developing situation. Sarah was surprised to see Major Torres and several of his F-16 pilots already present, their expressions suggesting they had received similar notifications. The presence of multiple aircraft communities indicated that the final mission plan involved more complexity than she had anticipated. This would not be a single platform operation, but a coordinated effort requiring integration between different capabilities. Colonel Hawkins entered the briefing room accompanied by a general officer whom Sarah recognized from photographs but had never met personally. General Marcus Sterling commanded the entire Tactical Air Command and rarely appeared at base-level operations unless something extremely significant was developing. His presence confirmed that the Valdres rescue operation had received the highest levels of attention and approval. Ladies and gentlemen, Operation Highland Rescue has been approved at the National Command Authority level, General Sterling announced without preamble. We have 12 hours to complete final preparations and deploy to forward operating locations. What I'm about to brief you represents the most challenging rescue operation attempted by American forces in the past decade. The main display activated to show updated intelligence from the Valdres operational area. The imagery was clearer and more detailed than what Sarah had seen the previous day, suggesting that additional surveillance assets had been tasked to support mission planning. The rebel positions around the hostage compound were more extensive than initial assessments had indicated. The tactical situation has deteriorated significantly over the past 24 hours, Sterling continued. The rebels have reinforced their defensive positions and have moved additional surface-to-air missile systems into the area. They appear to be preparing for military action against their hostages, giving us an extremely narrow window for intervention. Sarah studied the updated intelligence with growing concern. The defensive arrangements were more sophisticated than she had anticipated, with overlapping fields of fire and integrated early warning systems that would challenge any attacking force. The rebels had clearly received professional military assistance in establishing their defensive network. The mission profile will require unprecedented coordination between multiple aircraft types, operating in an extremely compressed time frame, Sterling explained. F-16s will establish air superiority and suppress long-range surface-to-air systems. Special operations helicopters will insert ground forces for hostage extraction. But the critical element will be close air support during the ground phase of the operation. The general paused and looked directly at Sarah before continuing. The tactical environment around the hostage compound requires aircraft capable of operating at extremely low altitudes while providing precise fire support. Danger close to friendly forces. After extensive analysis, we have determined that only one platform in our inventory can safely and effectively perform this mission. Sarah felt every eye in the briefing room turn toward her as the implications of Sterling's statement became clear. The A-10 community had been selected not as a backup option or supporting element, but as the primary close air support platform for the most critical phase of the operation. The aircraft that had been dismissed as obsolete was now essential to mission success. Major Torres shifted uncomfortably in his seat, his expression reflecting recognition that his F-16s, despite their advanced capabilities, could not provide the precision and persistence required for the ground support mission. The speed and altitude that made his aircraft superior in air-to-air combat became liabilities when supporting troops operating within meters of hostile forces. Captain Chen, General Sterling addressed her directly, your mission analysis identified the tactical requirements that make A-10 participation essential rather than optional. You will serve as flight lead for the close air support element, with responsibility for coordination with ground forces and weapons delivery in the most challenging environment we've encountered. Sarah stood and came to attention, understanding the weight of responsibility being placed on her shoulders. Sir, I accept the mission and will execute it to the best of my abilities. The A-10 community is ready to demonstrate our capabilities in support of American personnel in danger. This is not about platform advocacy or service rivalry, Sterling replied firmly. This is about using the right tool for an extremely difficult job. Your aircraft and your expertise are what this mission requires, and failure is not an option. The briefing continued with detailed intelligence updates and coordination procedures that would govern the complex operation. Sarah learned that she would lead a flight of 4 A-10s, providing continuous close air support coverage during the ground phase of the rescue. The margin for error was essentially zero, with hostage safety requiring absolute precision in weapons delivery. The timeline was aggressive but achievable. Transport aircraft would carry the A-10s and their support equipment to a forward operating base within range of the target area. Final mission planning and coordination would occur during the deployment phase, with launch scheduled for the following evening when darkness would provide additional concealment for the operation. As the formal briefing concluded, pilots dispersed to their respective preparation areas to complete final equipment checks and personal preparations. Sarah noticed that Major Torres approached her as she gathered her materials, his expression serious but not hostile. "Chen, I owe you an apology," Torres said quietly. "I've spent years dismissing the A-10 as obsolete without really understanding what makes it unique. This mission has opened my eyes to capabilities that we've lost in our pursuit of speed. Sophistication." Sarah was surprised by his admission, but recognized the sincerity in his voice. "Thank you, Major. Every aircraft has its role and mission. This operation just happens to align with what the Warthog does best. It's more than that," Torres continued. "You've maintained proficiency in skills that the rest of us have allowed to atrophy. Close air support, visual target identification, coordination with ground forces. We've become too dependent on technology and standoff weapons. You've kept the human element alive in air warfare." The conversation was interrupted by the arrival of other pilots preparing for the deployment, but Sarah appreciated Torres's acknowledgement of the A-10's unique capabilities. The mission ahead would require every skill she had developed over years of training and combat experience, and recognition from her peers provided additional confidence in her preparation. The remainder of the morning was consumed by intensive preparation activities. Sarah conducted detailed briefings with her 3 wingmen, ensuring that each pilot understood their specific role in the complex operation. They reviewed weapons loads, communication procedures, and contingency plans for various scenarios that might develop during the mission. The intelligence picture continued to evolve as additional information became available from surveillance assets already deployed to the operational area. The rebels appeared to be maintaining strict security around the hostage compound, but their defensive positions showed vulnerabilities that could be exploited by properly coordinated attacks. Sarah's role as flight lead required her to understand not only her own aircraft's capabilities, but also the limitations and requirements of the special operations forces she would be supporting. She spent hours studying ground unit tactics, communication protocols, and coordination procedures that would be essential for mission success. The psychological pressure was significant, but manageable. Sarah had experienced similar stress during combat deployments when mission success depended on individual performance under extreme circumstances. Her training and experience provided confidence that she could execute the required tasks, but the stakes were higher than anything she had previously encountered. The departure process began in mid-afternoon as equipment and personnel were loaded onto transport aircraft for deployment to the forward operating base. Sarah's A-10 was carefully secured in the cargo hold of a C-17 transport, along with weapons, spare parts, and support equipment necessary for sustained operations away from main bases. The flight to the forward operating location took 6 hours, providing time for final mission planning and coordination with other elements of the rescue force. Sarah used the time to review intelligence materials, study target area maps, and mentally rehearse the complex procedures that would govern weapons delivery in close proximity to friendly forces. The forward operating base was an austere facility that had been hastily established to support the rescue operation. Located in a neighboring country that had agreed to provide basing rights for humanitarian purposes, the base consisted of temporary shelters, portable fuel systems, and minimal maintenance facilities. Everything about the environment emphasized the urgent, temporary nature of the operation. Sarah's A-10 was quickly reassembled and prepared for combat operations by maintenance crews, who had deployed specifically to support the mission. Their efficiency and expertise were evident in every action, reflecting years of experience in rapidly establishing combat capability in austere environments. The final mission briefing took place in a tent that served as the operational planning center for the entire rescue force. Representatives from all participating units were present, creating a level of coordination that was rarely achieved in training exercises. The complexity of the operation required unprecedented integration between air and ground forces. The ground phase will begin at 0200 local time, the Special Operations Commander briefed. Insertion will occur at 3 separate locations around the compound, with teams moving simultaneously to secure hostage locations and neutralize defensive positions. A-10 support will be critical during the 15-minute window when ground forces are most vulnerable. Sarah studied the timeline carefully, noting the narrow margins that would govern every aspect of the operation. The Special Operations teams would have minimal time to complete their objectives before rebel reinforcements could arrive. Her close air support would need to be precisely coordinated and devastatingly effective. Communication will be the key to success, the commander continued. Ground teams will maintain constant contact with air support, providing real-time updates on target locations and friendly positions. Weapons release authority will be strictly controlled to prevent fratricidal incidents. The weight of responsibility settled heavily on Sarah's shoulders as she realized how completely the ground forces would depend on her judgment and skill. In the darkness and confusion of combat, split-second decisions about weapons employment could determine the difference between mission success and catastrophic failure. The final hours before mission launch passed quickly as Sarah completed her personal preparations and conducted final coordination with her wingmen. Each pilot understood their specific role in the operation, and their collective confidence reflected years of training in exactly this type of mission. The A-10s were loaded with a mixed weapons configuration optimized for the expected threats and targets. The 30mm GAU-8 cannon would provide the primary firepower for precision engagements, while Maverick missiles offered standoff capability against hardened targets. Flares and chaff would provide defensive protection against surface-to-air missiles. As Sarah strapped into her cockpit for the mission launch, she reflected on the journey that had brought her to this moment. Years of training, combat experience, and dedication to an aircraft that others considered obsolete had prepared her for exactly this type of challenge. The A-10's unique capabilities would be tested under the most demanding possible circumstances. The engines wound up with their characteristic sound, a deep rumble that announced the Warthog's readiness for combat. Sarah completed her systems checks with the methodical precision that had become second nature, ensuring that every switch, every gauge, every system was properly configured for the mission ahead. Sabre flight, check in. Sarah transmitted on the tactical frequency, using the call sign assigned for the operation. Sabre 2, ready, came the immediate response from her first wingman. Sabre 3, ready, followed the second wingman. Sabre 4, ready, completed the flight check-in. Tower, Sabre flight ready for departure, Sarah called to the control facility. Sabre flight, cleared for takeoff. Winds light and variable. Altimeter 3002. Good hunting. The 4 A-10s lifted off into the darkness, their navigation lights the only visible indication of their presence as they climbed toward their assigned altitude. Below them, the forward operating base disappeared into the night, leaving only the glow of their instruments and the sound of their engines to mark their progress toward the target area. The flight to the operational area took 90 minutes. Following a carefully planned route that avoided populated areas and known radar installations, Sarah maintained radio silence except for essential navigation updates, understanding that electronic emissions could compromise the entire operation. As they approached the target area, Sarah could see other elements of the rescue force moving into position. Transport helicopters carrying special operations teams were visible on her infrared display, their heat signatures distinct against the cool mountain background. F-16s were already on station at higher altitudes, ready to engage any air defense systems that might threaten the operation. Sabre flight, this is Guardian Control, came the voice of the ground controller who would coordinate the entire operation. Ground teams are beginning final approach. Stand by for tasking. Sarah acknowledged the call and settled into a holding pattern at low altitude, her aircraft hidden among the mountain ridges that surrounded the target area. The waiting was always the most difficult part of any operation, when adrenaline and anticipation built toward the moment when training and preparation would be tested by reality. Guardian Control, Sabre lead, Sarah transmitted. Ready to copy target information. Sabre lead, we have multiple defensive positions around the compound. Priority targets are machine gun nests at grid references I'm about to transmit. Ground teams are 2 minutes from insertion. Sarah copied the target coordinates and quickly plotted them on her tactical display. The defensive positions were exactly where intelligence had predicted, but their exact locations required real-time updates from ground observers to ensure accurate engagement. Sabre flight, this is Guardian 6, came a new voice on the radio, the ground force commander. Teams are in position. We're beginning the assault in 30 seconds. Stand by for immediate tasking. Sarah felt her heart rate increase as the moment of truth approached. Everything she had trained for, everything the A-10 was designed to accomplish, would be tested in the next few minutes. The lives of American hostages and the success of the entire operation depended on her ability to deliver precise, effective fire support in the most challenging possible circumstances. Guardian 6, Sabre lead standing by, she replied, her voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her system. The rescue operation that would define her career and vindicate her aircraft was about to begin. Guardian 6, this is Sabre lead. I have visual on the compound. Beginning attack run on the northern defensive position. Sarah rolled her A-10 into a shallow dive. The massive GAU-8 cannon aligned with the machine gun nest that had already opened fire on the approaching special operations team. Through her night vision goggles, she could see muzzle flashes erupting from the rebel position, tracers arcing toward the American forces advancing under cover of darkness. The A-10 responded to her control inputs with deliberate precision, its flight characteristics allowing her to maintain perfect aim even while maneuvering at low altitude. She waited until the last possible moment before pressing the trigger, unleashing a 3-second burst from the 30mm cannon that sent depleted uranium rounds screaming toward the target at 4,200 rounds per minute. The effect was instantaneous and devastating. The rebel position disappeared in a cloud of dust and debris, the defensive fire ceasing immediately as the GAU-8's massive shells obliterated everything within a 20-meter radius. Sarah pulled up sharply, banking away from the target area while scanning for additional threats. Guardian 6, Sabre Lead, northern position neutralized. Ground team, you're clear to advance. Sabre Lead, Guardian 6, excellent work. We're moving to the compound now. Stand by for additional tasking. Sarah climbed back to her attack. Altitude, her 3 wingmen maintaining protective formation around her as they prepared for the next phase of the operation. Below them, the special operations teams were advancing rapidly toward the buildings where the hostages were being held. Their movements coordinated with military precision despite the challenging terrain and defensive obstacles. Sabre Lead. Guardian Control, we have movement from the eastern ridge. Appears to be a reinforcement convoy approaching the compound. Can you intercept? Sarah turned her aircraft toward the new threat, quickly identifying the column of vehicles moving along a mountain road toward the hostage location. Through her targeting pod, she could see armed personnel in the truck beds, their weapons clearly visible in the infrared imagery. This was exactly the kind of target that the A-10 had been designed to engage. Guardian Control, Sabre Lead. I have visual on the convoy, engaging with Maverick missiles. Sarah selected her AGM-65 Maverick missiles and locked onto the lead. Vehicle in the convoy. The infrared guidance system painted a perfect target picture, allowing her to engage from a safe distance while maintaining accuracy. She fired 2 missiles in rapid succession, watching their heat signatures streak toward the targets below. The explosions lit up the mountain road as both missiles found their marks, destroying the lead vehicles and blocking the convoy's advance. Secondary explosions indicated that some of the trucks had been carrying ammunition or fuel, adding to the devastation. The surviving vehicles scattered, their occupants abandoning their mission and seeking cover in the rocky terrain. Guardian Control, Sabre Lead, convoy neutralized. Road is blocked and enemy forces are dispersing. Outstanding, Sabre Lead. Ground teams are at the compound perimeter. Stand by for danger close support. This was the moment that Sarah had trained for throughout her career. Danger close support meant delivering ordnance within 600 meters of friendly forces, requiring absolute precision and perfect coordination between air and ground elements. The margin for error was measured in meters rather than kilometers, and a single mistake could result in friendly casualties. Guardian 6, Sabre Lead, ready for danger close tasking. Confirm friendly positions and mark targets. Sabre Lead, Guardian 6. Friendlies are marked with infrared strobes on the north and west sides of the compound. Target is a sniper position in the bell tower at the center of the complex. Hostiles are approximately 150 meters from friendly positions. Sarah studied her targeting display carefully, identifying the infrared strobes that marked American positions while locating the enemy sniper who was engaging the rescue teams. The shot would require surgical precision, using the GAU-8 cannon to eliminate the threat, without risking collateral damage to the surrounding buildings where hostages might be located. Guardian 6, Sabre Lead. I have visual on friendly strobes. And target tower. Confirm you want cannon fire on the bell tower structure. Sabre Lead, Guardian 6. Confirmed. Take out that sniper. Our people are pinned down. Sarah lined up her attack run with meticulous care, approaching from an angle that would allow her cannon fire to impact the tower without threatening friendly positions or hostage locations. The A-10 stability at low speed gave her the control necessary for such precise weapons delivery, capabilities that faster aircraft simply could not match. She fired a controlled burst, watching the 30mm rounds impact the tower structure with devastating effect. The ancient stone construction collapsed under the assault, eliminating the sniper threat while leaving the surrounding buildings intact. Dust and debris filled the air, but the hostage locations remained undamaged. Guardian 6, Sabre Lead. Tower destroyed. Sniper threat eliminated. Sabre Lead, Guardian 6. perfect shot. We're moving to secure the hostages now. Maintain overwatch. For additional threats, Sarah established a protective orbit around the compound. Her wingmen spread out to provide comprehensive coverage of the area. They watched for additional enemy reinforcements while monitoring the progress of the rescue teams below. The operation was proceeding according to plan, but the most dangerous phase was still ahead. The extraction of hostages required precise timing and coordination. The rescue teams had to locate and secure all American personnel while establishing safe evacuation routes under the protection of air cover. Any delay could allow enemy reinforcements to arrive and complicate the withdrawal. Guardian Control, Guardian 6. We have secured 12 hostages and confirmed all American personnel are accounted for. Beginning extraction to landing zone Alpha. Guardian 6, Guardian Control, Roger. Sabre Flight, provide escort coverage for the extraction helicopters. Sarah watched as the special operations teams moved carefully through the compound, escorting the rescued hostages toward the designated landing zone, where helicopters would extract them to safety. The Americans appeared to be in reasonable physical condition, despite their captivity, though several required medical assistance. Sabre Lead, Guardian Control. We have aerial surveillance indicating additional enemy movement from the south. Large force approaching the landing zone. Sarah turned her attention toward the new threat, identifying the significant enemy force moving to intercept the extraction operation. This was the contingency that mission planners had feared most: a well-coordinated counterattack during the most vulnerable phase of the rescue, when helicopters were exposed during landing and takeoff. Guardian Control, Sabre Lead. I count approximately 30 vehicles and over 100 personnel. They'll reach the landing zone in 10 minutes. Sabre Lead, Guardian Control, you are cleared to engage. Stop that force before they can interfere with extraction. This was exactly the kind of target that had made the A-10 legendary during the Gulf War, a large armored formation moving in open terrain. Sarah felt a surge of confidence as she prepared to demonstrate why the Warthog had earned its reputation as the premier tank-killing aircraft in the world. Sabre Flight, this is Lead. We're going to hit them hard and fast. 2 and 3, take the eastern flank. 4, you're with me on the western approach. Use everything we've got. Sarah dove toward the enemy formation, selecting her remaining Maverick missiles for the initial attack. She targeted the largest vehicles first, understanding that destroying command and control elements would disrupt the enemy's coordination and reduce their effectiveness. Her missiles streaked toward their targets with deadly accuracy, each impact creating a massive explosion that illuminated the mountainside. Her wingmen attacked simultaneously from different angles, their combined firepower overwhelming the enemy formation before they could organize effective defensive measures. Sarah followed up with strafing runs using her GAU-8 cannon, the distinctive sound of the weapon echoing through the mountains as streams of depleted uranium rounds tore through enemy vehicles and positions. The psychological impact was as important as the physical damage, as surviving enemy personnel abandoned their vehicles and scattered into the rocky terrain. Guardian Control, Sabre Flight. Enemy formation destroyed. Landing zone is secure for extraction. Sabre Flight, Guardian Control. Outstanding work. Extraction helicopters are inbound now. Sarah established overwatch positions as the rescue helicopters arrived at the landing zone, their rotors churning up dust clouds as they settled onto the rocky ground. She watched the hostages being loaded aboard under the protection of the special operations teams, each American carefully assisted into the aircraft that would carry them to freedom. The extraction proceeded smoothly under the protective umbrella provided by the A-10 circling overhead. Sarah maintained constant surveillance of the surrounding area, ready to engage any threats that might emerge as the helicopters prepared for departure. Guardian Control, extraction complete. All personnel are aboard and secure. Roger, Guardian. Sabre flight, escort the helicopters to the recovery point. Sarah formed up with the extraction helicopters as they lifted off from the landing zone, providing protective escort during the most vulnerable phase of their flight. The A-10's ability to fly slowly and maintain close formation with the helicopters was another advantage that faster aircraft could not provide. The flight to the recovery point took 40 minutes, following a carefully planned route that avoided populated areas and known air defense sites. Sarah maintained radio contact with air traffic controllers and early warning systems, ensuring that the rescue force remained coordinated and protected throughout the withdrawal. As they approached the recovery airfield, Sarah felt the satisfaction that came from mission completion under the most challenging possible circumstances. Every element of the operation had proceeded according to plan, and all American personnel had been recovered safely. The A-10's unique capabilities had proven essential to the mission's success. Guardian control, Sabre lead, hostages safely delivered to recovery point, mission complete. Sabre lead, Guardian control. Exceptional performance by your entire flight. The hostages are safe because of your precision and professionalism. The landing at the recovery airfield was routine after the intensity of the combat operation. Sarah taxied her A-10 to the parking area, where maintenance crews were waiting to service the aircraft for the return journey to home base. The successful mission had vindicated every argument she had made about the A-10's continued relevance. As she shut down her engines and completed her post-flight inspection, Sarah reflected on the night's events. The operation had required every skill she had developed over years of training and combat experience. More importantly, it had demonstrated that the A-10's specialized capabilities remained essential for certain types of missions that newer aircraft simply could not perform. Major Torres was waiting when she climbed down from her cockpit, his expression reflecting genuine admiration and respect. The F-16 pilot who had spent years mocking her aircraft now understood why some missions required the unique combination of precision, persistence, and survivability that only the Warthog could provide. "Sarah, I owe you more than an apology," Torres said sincerely. "What you accomplished tonight was extraordinary. Your aircraft and your skills saved those hostages and probably prevented an international incident." "Thank you, Rick," Sarah replied. "Every aircraft has its place in modern warfare. Tonight just happened to be the A-10's turn to prove its worth." The debriefing process revealed the full scope of the A-10's contribution to mission success. Sarah's flight had destroyed over 40 enemy vehicles, eliminated multiple defensive positions, and provided precision fire support that had been critical to the ground team's success. The rescued hostages confirmed that the psychological impact of the A-10's cannon fire had demoralized their captors and contributed to the rescue operation's success. General Sterling personally congratulated Sarah and her wingman during the formal debriefing, acknowledging that their performance had exceeded all expectations. The operation would become a case study in close air support tactics and would influence future discussions about the A-10's role in military operations. "Captain Chen," General Sterling said privately after the group debriefing, "your analysis and performance during this operation have reminded us why certain capabilities should never be discarded in favor of newer technology. The A-10 has earned its place in the Air Force inventory for years to come." Sarah felt a quiet satisfaction that went beyond personal recognition. The mission had proven that effectiveness in military operations came from matching the right tool to the specific requirements of each situation. The A-10's age and limitations had become advantages when applied to the right tactical environment. The return journey to Nellis Air Force Base took place over several days, with stops for refueling and crew rest at intermediate locations. Sarah used the time to document lessons learned from the operation and to reflect on the implications for future A-10 operations and pilot training. Back at Nellis, the successful rescue mission generated significant attention throughout the military community. The operation was classified, but word of the A-10's critical role spread quickly among aircrew and planners who understood the tactical challenges that had been overcome. Sarah returned to her normal training schedule, but the atmosphere around the A-10 community had changed dramatically. The aircraft that had been scheduled for retirement was now receiving renewed attention from military planners who recognized that its unique capabilities filled a gap that could not be addressed by other platforms. The mockery and dismissive comments from F-16 pilots had been replaced by genuine respect and professional curiosity about close air support tactics and procedures. Sarah found herself teaching classes on precision weapons delivery and ground coordination techniques to pilots from other aircraft communities. Her personal satisfaction came not from vindication or recognition, but from the knowledge that her expertise and dedication had contributed to saving American lives. The hostages who had been rescued in Valdres would return to their families because she and her fellow A-10 pilots had been prepared for exactly the type of mission that others considered impossible. The A-10 Thunderbolt II would continue flying for years to come, its future secured by a single night's work over the mountains of a distant country. Sarah had proven that in military aviation, as in many other fields, older didn't necessarily mean obsolete. Sometimes the most important work was done by those who understood that effectiveness mattered more than appearance, that reliability trumped sophistication, and that the right tool for the job was often the one that others had forgotten or dismissed. The quiet professional who flew the unglamorous aircraft had demonstrated once again that true strength didn't need to announce itself loudly. It simply showed up when needed, performed flawlessly under pressure, and got the job done regardless of what others thought about its methods or equipment. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.